Nobody could have seen this coming.
We'll fix it. I'll be right next to you.
That's not where you want to be.
That's why I won't be anywhere else.
Beth is finally starting to realize that the nightmare-destroying Dutton Ranch may not be an accident after all. And honestly, episode 4 could completely change everything we thought we knew about Bula. Because the more Beth investigates the outbreak spreading across the ranch, the more suspicious everything starts to feel. First, it looked like bad luck. A dangerous disease enters the ranch, the cattle begin getting infected one after another, and suddenly Beth and Rip are facing the possibility of losing the one thing that was supposed to give them peace. But now there are signs that somebody may have planned this from the very beginning. And if Beth discovers the truth, then this conflict is about to become far more personal and far more dangerous than ever before. What makes this even more terrifying is that Beth is not dealing with an ordinary enemy. Bula doesn't lose control emotionally. She stays calm. She waits patiently. And that is exactly why she feels so dangerous every time she appears on screen. Episode 4, titled Start with a Bullet, already sounds like a warning that violence and betrayal are about to explode across the ranch. But I think the real shock of this episode will not just be the disease itself. I think the biggest moment will happen when Beth finally realizes somebody intentionally brought that infected bull onto their property. And once that truth hits her, there is absolutely no turning back anymore. The episode will probably begin with complete panic spreading across the ranch after more cattle become infected overnight. Rip already looked emotionally exhausted by the end of episode 3. But now the situation is becoming impossible to control. Every minute matters because the disease is moving too fast, and the fear on the ranch is only getting worse. I think we're going to see veterinarians, government officials, and ranch workers all arguing over what needs to happen next. Some people will want immediate action before the outbreak spreads beyond the property, while others will still hope there's a way to save at least part of the herd. But deep down, Rip probably already knows the truth. He understands that they may have to destroy the infected cattle before everything gets even worse. And honestly, that decision alone could emotionally break him. One thing this show has always done really well is showing how deeply connected Rip is to the animals and the ranch itself. This isn't just money to him. This ranch represents stability, family, and the future he and Beth were trying to build together after everything they survived in Montana. That's why watching the ranch fall apart around him could become one of the saddest moments in the entire series so far. At the same time, Beth will begin noticing details that don't make sense. And we all know Beth is extremely dangerous when she starts connecting pieces together. Unlike Rip, who reacts emotionally first, Beth immediately starts looking for motives, patterns, and weaknesses. I think the first clue will come from the auction where they purchased the bull. Beth may discover that Bula was strangely interested in that exact animal before Rip bought it. Maybe someone from the auction remembers Bula asking questions about the bull. Or maybe Beth finds out that the animal was transferred through suspicious paperwork before arriving at the ranch. Whatever the clue is, it will be enough to trigger Beth's instincts. And once Beth becomes suspicious, she never stops digging until she finds the truth. That's where things could start getting really intense. I don't think Bula expected Beth to investigate this quickly. Bula probably believed the disease would simply destroy the ranch slowly, while making everything appear natural. From the outside, nobody would suspect sabotage because outbreaks like this can happen in rural areas. But Beth has lived around manipulation and betrayal her entire life. She knows when something feels wrong. And right now everything feels wrong. I also think episode 4 will finally reveal more about Bula's real influence and power. So far, the show has only hinted at how dangerous she truly is. We know she controls people quietly through fear, business connections, and money. But I think this episode may show that her reach is even bigger than anyone imagined. There could be corrupt officials protecting her behind the scenes. There could be ranchers working for her without Beth and Rip realizing it. And honestly, that possibility makes the situation even scarier, because it means Beth and Rip may already be surrounded by people they cannot trust. One scene I'm especially expecting is Beth secretly investigating Bula's business history. Beth has always been brilliant at uncovering hidden information about powerful people, and I think she's going to find evidence connecting Bula to other suspicious situations in the past. Maybe other ranches failed after business conflicts with her. Maybe there were previous outbreaks or accidents surrounding properties she wanted to acquire. And if Beth uncovers even one piece of proof, then the war between these two women will officially begin. But here's the terrifying part. Bula may already know Beth is investigating her. And if that's true, then Beth could unknowingly walk straight into a trap during this episode. Because Bula doesn't seem like the type of person who panics when threatened. She seems like the type of person who eliminates problems before they grow bigger. That's why the titles start with a bullet feels so important. I honestly think somebody is going to get seriously hurt before this episode ends. Maybe one of the ranch workers discovers something they shouldn't know. Maybe Rip confronts the wrong person. Or maybe Beth herself becomes a target after getting too close to the truth. Either way, episode 4 feels like the moment this series stops being only about saving a ranch and becomes a full psychological war between Beth and Bula. And the scariest part is that Beth may finally realize she underestimated her enemy from the very beginning. What makes this entire situation even more dangerous is that Rip and Beth are no longer fighting only against the disease. Now they're fighting against fear itself. And honestly, fear may end up destroying the ranch faster than the outbreak ever could. Because once rumors begin spreading that the infection might not be contained, people around the ranch will start panicking. Workers may begin leaving. Neighboring ranch owners may start distancing themselves from Rip completely. And suddenly, Beth and Rip could find themselves isolated right when they need help the most. I think episode 4 is going to show just how quickly everything can collapse when trust disappears. The ranch was supposed to be their fresh start after losing almost everything in Montana. But now it's starting to feel like history is repeating itself all over again. And the worst part is that Beth can already sense somebody is manipulating the entire situation behind the scenes. One thing I noticed about Beth in the previous episodes is that she becomes even more dangerous when she feels cornered. Most people break under pressure, but Beth becomes colder, smarter, and far more aggressive. That's exactly why I think episode 4 will slowly transform her from a worried ranch owner into someone completely obsessed with exposing the truth. She won't care about the risks anymore. She won't care who she has to confront. Once Beth convinces herself that Bula intentionally infected the ranch, there's no way she's going to sit quietly and wait for another attack. And honestly, I think Bula already understands that about her. That's why their scenes together feel so intense even when neither woman says much. Every conversation between them feels like two predators testing each other, waiting to see who loses patience first. I actually think one of the most important moments in episode 4 could happen during a private meeting between Beth and Bula. On the surface, the conversation will probably sound calm and professional. But underneath, there will be tension in every word. Beth may directly accuse her without fully revealing what evidence she has found. And Bula may respond with that same calm attitude that makes her so unsettling. What makes Bula terrifying is that she never reacts emotionally. She almost enjoys watching people become desperate around her. And if Beth walks into that conversation already angry and suspicious, Bula might intentionally provoke her even further. I can honestly imagine Bula saying something that hints she knows more about Beth and Rip's past than she should. And the moment Beth realizes Bula has been investigating them too, everything changes. Because now the threat becomes personal in an entirely different way. Up until now, Beth and Rip were trying to protect the ranch. But if Bula starts uncovering secrets connected to Jamie, then Beth could panic in a way we've never seen before. That secret alone has the power to destroy everything they built together. If the truth ever comes out publicly, Beth and Rip could lose their freedom, their future, and possibly each other. And honestly, I think Bula is smart enough to understand exactly how powerful that information could be. She may not even need proof yet. Just knowing there are dark secrets buried in Beth's past might be enough for her to start applying pressure. That's why episode 4 feels so much bigger than a normal ranch drama now. The disease outbreak is only the beginning. The real story is becoming psychological warfare. Both Beth and Bula are trying to figure out how far the other person is willing to go. And the scary thing is that both women seem capable of doing terrible things when pushed too far. Meanwhile, Rip may start taking matters into his own hands in a completely different way. Unlike Beth, Rip doesn't play mind games. When he believes somebody is threatening the people he loves, he responds directly. And honestly, I think the emotional pressure building inside him is about to explode. Watching the cattle suffer, seeing Beth under constant stress, and feeling helpless while the ranch falls apart could push Rip into making reckless decisions. I wouldn't be surprised if he starts investigating the bull's origin himself without telling Beth. Maybe he tracks down somebody connected to the auction. Maybe he questions workers who handled the animal before it arrived at the ranch. And maybe during that investigation, Rip discovers evidence that confirms Beth's worst fears. But here's where things could become really dangerous. What if the infected bull was only one part of a much larger plan? I've been thinking about this theory a lot, and honestly it would explain why Bula seems so calm despite the chaos spreading everywhere. Maybe she already knew the outbreak would force Beth and Rip into financial desperation. Maybe she expected government restrictions to weaken the ranch until they had no choice but to sell. And if that's true, then Bula may have been planning this entire situation long before Beth and Rip even realized they were targets. That possibility changes everything because it means the ranch was under attack from the very beginning. I also think episode May 4th finally reveal cracks in Beth and Rip's relationship for the first time this season. Not because they don't love each other, but because the pressure is becoming unbearable. Beth wants answers immediately, while Rip may only care about saving what's left of the ranch. Those different priorities could create tension between them at exactly the wrong moment. And honestly, emotional conflict between Beth and Rip always makes the story even more intense because you know both characters are already carrying years of trauma and pain. One wrong decision now could destroy the fragile piece they worked so hard to build together. But even with all this chaos happening around them, I still think Beth is getting closer to uncovering the truth. The problem is that the closer she gets, the more dangerous the situation becomes. Because if Bula truly orchestrated this outbreak, then she's not going to let Beth expose her without a fight. And episode 4 feels like the exact moment where this hidden war finally steps out into the open. By the middle of episode 4, I think Beth is going to realize something even more disturbing. The outbreak may have never been about the cattle at all. And honestly, that possibility changes the entire meaning behind everything happening at Dutton Ranch right now. Because if Bula intentionally brought the disease onto the property, then the real goal was never just financial damage. The real goal was psychological destruction. Somebody wanted Beth and Rip exhausted, emotional, isolated, and desperate enough to make mistakes. And the scary part is that the plan is actually working. You can already see the pressure slowly breaking everyone down. Rip is emotionally drained. The workers are terrified. And Beth is becoming more paranoid with every new discovery she makes. That's exactly the kind of environment where dangerous decisions happen. I think one of the biggest turning points in this episode will happen when Beth uncovers information connected to the ranch Bula originally wanted to buy. Earlier in the season, Bula mentioned losing that property to Beth and Rip almost like she took the situation personally. First, it sounded like normal business frustration. But now it feels much deeper than that. I honestly believe Bula became obsessed the moment Beth and Rip took control of that ranch. Not because of the land itself, but because she hates losing control over anything. People like Bula don't simply walk away after losing something they wanted. They wait. They plan carefully. And then they strike when nobody expects it. That's why I think Beth is finally starting to understand the kind of enemy she's dealing with. This isn't somebody acting emotionally or impulsively. This is somebody who creates long-term plans and manipulates people quietly from the shadows. And once Beth realizes that, she may start becoming afraid in a way we rarely ever see from her character. One thing I've noticed about Beth throughout the series is that she's fearless when facing open conflict. She can destroy people verbally without hesitation. She can handle threats directly. But psychological manipulation is different because it creates uncertainty. Beth doesn't know how many people Bula controls. She doesn't know who she can trust anymore. And that uncertainty alone can slowly destroy someone mentally. I think the episode may even show Beth secretly questioning people around the ranch, trying to figure out whether somebody helped bring the infected animal onto the property intentionally. And honestly, if she discovers someone close to them was involved, it could become one of the biggest betrayals of the entire show. Imagine how devastating it would be if somebody Rip trusted accepted money to help sabotage the ranch. Rip treats loyalty almost like family, so betrayal hits him harder than anyone else. That kind of revelation could push him into full revenge mode instantly. At the same time, I think Bula will continue playing her game very carefully. She's probably smart enough not to leave direct evidence connecting herself to the outbreak. Instead, She may start manipulating the situation politically and financially while Beth searches for proof emotionally. That's what makes her so dangerous. She understands that powerful people don't always destroy enemies through violence. Sometimes they destroy them slowly by turning systems against them. And honestly, I think episode May 4th begins showing exactly how much influence Bula has behind closed doors. There could be officials suddenly pressuring the ranch harder than necessary. There could be legal threats. There could even be discussions about forcing the ranch into quarantine permanently. Every new problem will probably feel small individually, but together they create a trap Beth and Rip can barely escape from. Meanwhile, Rip may begin noticing that Beth is hiding how serious the situation really is. Beth always tries to carry pressure alone because she believes vulnerability is weakness. But Rip knows her better than anyone. He can probably already see that she's terrified underneath all that anger. And honestly, I think we're going to get some extremely emotional scenes between them in this episode because for the first time in a long time, Beth may truly feel powerless. Usually, Beth always has control over something. If somebody attacks her financially, she fights back financially. If somebody threatens her emotionally, she destroys them mentally. But Bula is different because Beth still doesn't fully understand how this woman operates. And that uncertainty is making her more unstable every episode. I also have a feeling episode May 4th finally reveal why the title Start with a Bullet is so important. Up until now, most of the conflict has been psychological and emotional. But this episode feels like the point where violence finally enters the story directly. I honestly would not be surprised if somebody connected to the ranch gets attacked before the episode ends. Maybe a witness disappears after speaking to Beth. Maybe Rip confronts somebody during his investigation and things spiral out of control. Or maybe Bula sends a message to Beth in the most terrifying way possible just to prove how serious this war has become. And knowing this show, the violence will probably happen suddenly without warning. That's what makes the tension feel so effective right now. Every conversation feels dangerous because nobody truly knows how far Bula is willing to go. Another thing that keeps bothering me is how calm Bula remains during all this chaos. Most people would panic if suspicion started turning toward them. But Bula almost looks more confident with every episode. That tells me she either believes she's untouchable, or she has something much bigger planned for Beth and Rip. And honestly, I think the second possibility is far more likely. The disease outbreak may only be phase 1 of her plan. If Beth keeps investigating aggressively, Bula could decide it's time to completely destroy them personally instead of just taking their ranch. And if that happens, then episode May 4th end with Beth realizing she accidentally started a war she cannot walk away from anymore. Episode 4 moves closer toward its ending,